Mr. Ramachandra from the NR Hour Sports Show. This is episode 791. I'm joined by a special guest. His name is Nelson Figueroa Jr. He's a former MLB pitcher. He also pitched in Taiwan. He's a two-time Taiwan Series champion, and obviously now he works for SNY for the Mets. And really looking forward to this interview. And first of all, Nelson, how are you and your family doing during the tough situation?
We've been able to persevere. My parents had gotten COVID early on in March. My brother did as well, and when we didn't know a lot about it, but they were able to overcome it. And myself, my wife, and my daughter also got it in November. So it was scary, but we've been able to survive it and learn a lot about it, help educate others, and now we're on the backside of it after being vaccinated. So excited to be out and about and going to some games.
Yeah. So before we get to your career, but what's obviously what have you and your family learned from the past year? Obviously, your family got COVID, but what have you guys learned, and what's it like just to be back, just to cover games and seeing fans back in the ballpark?
Yeah, well, the family has learned that the value of time together. It was before kind of everybody doing their own thing, and now we reach out to each other more. The Zoom calls have been a blessing in disguise because you now really keep in contact with your family members a lot easier, able to get everybody in on a phone call from all over at once. Zoom itself has skyrocketed, of course, with their business, but it's a way that I think we've been able to prioritize what's important in life. Before the pandemic, there was no way you could work from home. No, it was impossible, right? It couldn't happen. Meanwhile, now everybody almost works from home, and even though some are going back, there are a lot of people who are liking the advantages of being able to work from home. Having said that, having fans in the ballpark is everything, man. That is everything. That is everything as a former player, as an analyst, as someone who enjoys going to a ball game, being able to support those guys.
Oh,
Hey,
nice dog.
yeah. Can you go do something? I'm busy right now. So yeah, that's been really the fun part, is to see after baseball came back, as the major sport that was dealing with the pandemic and still traveling. Basketball did it inside of a bubble, which
Right.
was a great idea. But for baseball, that really wasn't going to work, to have it only in, a couple stadiums. Baseball did the best that they could, regionalizing all the matchups and being able to at least have some kind of a season. That was important, I guess, to a lot of people, not just baseball fans, but with the economy the way it was, you wanted something to root for, to be watching, to have hope for. And now in this season, of course, being able to go to a ball game and cheer on your team, and it's been an exciting year thus far.
Yeah.
A ton of victories, which there's no rhyme or reason to it. I don't think anybody really has a way of saying what's the main culprit behind it. But what you're seeing is a lot of injuries. You're seeing a lot of different guys coming up and playing who last year got a chance to play, even though they were only in A ball, and they maybe wouldn't have got a chance to play at the major league level. At least now you got a chance to see them early on and know that they can handle some of that pressure in this season of 2021.
Yeah. So now we'll get to, I want to talk to you about this season too, but I want to talk about your career first. And obviously you had an interesting career. You played with a lot of teams, and obviously you played in Taiwan. And I want to ask you though, when did you get interested in playing baseball, and who did you look up to in the game of baseball while you were growing up?
Well, I've loved baseball ever since I could pick up a ball and throw it around. I wanted to hit all the time, play all the time. I was in little league at the age of 5. And we didn't have coach pitch back then. So it was, poor 5-year-olds throwing to each other, trying to throw strikes. But I had an affinity for it and wanted to just compete. And I was always around older kids, bigger kids. I was a small kid growing up, all the way through college. Even when I got drafted, I was, 5'10", about 130 pounds. So I was lucky enough just to get drafted at that small of a size. But I think it was very obvious that I was very determined. I was very passionate about the game. I worked hard, and I could compete, and I proved that at every level that I ever had a chance to play at. And I always tell people that you you're a double A pitcher if you're only in double A. You're a major league pitcher if they give you a chance to pitch in the major leagues. You don't get to determine that. And that's really frustrating and difficult for a player. There's a lot of things that go into who gets called up, how long they stay for, who's expendable. And I dealt with that a lot in my career. So I always kind of rooted for like the underdogs. But of course, growing up, Dwight Gooden was my favorite pitcher. You got a kid who's 19 years old and striking out 300 guys at the major league level with 2 pitches, wearing a New York Met jersey, which was my favorite team growing up. And I remember when I signed with the Mets, that was one of the biggest thrills for me. Is I signed, I went down to Florida. First uniform I put on, I'm wearing Dwight Gooden's pants, it has his name etched in it, and I'm wearing Howard Johnson's jersey.
Oh, wow.
So it was right there. It was a dream come true for me. Those were 2 of my favorite players on the Mets, because Howard Johnson being a smaller shortstop who switch hit, I switch hit. He was, a 30-30 guy. So I always tried to use my speed and, hit the ball hard, switch hit, be able to play shortstop. And then when I was on the mound, of course, I had that mental focus of trying to be Dwight Gooden or emulating Dwight Gooden. Nothing even comes close.
That's crazy. Wearing Doc Gooden's shirt, pants, and Howard John. Those are 2 legends right there.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So I got to ask you though. You made your debut with the Diamondbacks, but what did you learn as a pitcher in the minor leagues that got you to this point?
Oh man, that's one of the biggest things is when you get drafted and you're a professional all of a sudden.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys who feel they know it all. They're completed projects. I felt like I was a blank slate as soon as I got into pro ball. I felt like there was so much to learn. I felt like there was, so many different ways to get people out. I felt like, I would watch one guy, the way he held his curveball. I'd watch another guy, how he used his slider. I would ask guys all the time. I was always trying to get inside people's heads of what made them tick. I was very analytical when I was a pitcher. I'm so glad that they didn't have all these numbers out when I was playing, because I would have been focused on all these numbers and over focused, I would say.
Yeah.
But I grew in a way through the minor leagues where one of my first pitching coaches said to me that, you needed at least 500 innings in the minor leagues so that you could have gone through every situation. And I felt like that was really important for me, because I look at a lot of guys now who come up and, they've been in pro ball for 2 years, they get to the big leagues, and you'll see them for 2 years in the big leagues, and then you never hear from them again, because they are not able to deal with the pressures. They're not able to deal with the travel. They're not able to deal with the how to get over failure. It's great when you're on top. Success is everything you work for, but baseball is a game of failure, right? Hitters make out almost 8 out of 10 times nowadays. And as a pitcher, for myself, I know if I don't have good defense behind me, I can't do it by myself. 1 against 9 is never going to work. And I had to learn that along the way. How to pitch to contact, how to get quick outs, how to be able to pitch deep into the ball game as a starter. And then when I got to the big leagues and I felt like, okay, I'm a starter. I've been a starter my whole minor league career. I had to be able to adapt and become a reliever, how to warm up faster, how to, focus on only getting 2 pitches ready, focus on, the 3 guys you may face in that inning, and being very specialized and very specific with what you're going to use. I'm still learning. I'm 47 years old and no longer playing professionally, but I'm still learning. I learn every day whether I'm watching the game on TV or whether I'm coaching kids who are at 8 years old. And, I don't ever recommend throwing breaking balls at 8 years old, but I can watch a kid throw a baseball. And if he's constantly throwing it with a cutting motion and it's natural to him, then you see that, you start getting visions of, okay, this is how Mariano started. Mariano was throwing a ball that cut naturally. And why would I take that away from the kid? Where I would rather teach him how to use it and be successful with it, rather than just take that away from a kid. So I'm constantly learning. I think that's the beauty of this game. You continue to learn. You continue to watch a game and say, I've never seen that before. I don't think there's ever been a week that's gone by where I haven't seen something new.
Interesting. But before we get to your major league debut, I'm just curious for you. Obviously, you started games in the major leagues too, and eventually moved to the bullpens. How hard was it for you transitioning from a starter to the bullpen? Like you said, you got to adapt differently, warm up differently too when you're in the bullpen. So how hard was it for you transitioning from?
It was very difficult. It was very difficult because I think in the role that I was in, of course, as a starter, you're expected to be able to pitch, 6, 7 innings.
Yeah.
As the kind of reliever I wasn't a hard thrower, so I was the long man. So I was the guy who, if in case something happened to the starter, I was going to fill in and be able to eat up innings. Or when we go extra innings, past the 9th inning, okay, 10th, 11th, 12th are going to be mine. And so I had to deal with the only time I was going to pitch in a game was if the starter got his butt kicked. So you wind up going to the ballpark, and it's not that you're hoping that your teammate has failure or your teammate doesn't do well, but it's like, I haven't pitched in a week. Hey, I'm sitting here, I'm anxious. I want to get out there. I feel like I'm rusty. And the only way I'm going to get in the game is if we go extra innings or if the starter gets his butt kicked. And I had early on in my career, I had a pitcher coach named Vern Rule with the Philadelphia Phillies, and I had to sit down with him. And I said, how do I mentally prepare for this? I said, I'm all about the team winning and success. So it's hard for me where I'm not getting my opportunity. And he kept saying, just, bide your time. You have major league stuff. We want you here. We're not sending you to the minor leagues, but, we've got to find situations that you would be able to help us out with. And because I had a rubber arm and I could pitch every day, they felt I was better suited in the bullpen. And so it took a little while to learn that and to swallow the ego. Of course, every guy who's playing professional baseball, you got to have some kind of ego. You got to have that kind of confidence and that swagger. Well, it's hard to do that when the only time you're getting a chance to pitch is when the team is losing. I think I set a major league record or something like that. I saw it on the internet a while ago. It was like 43 straight games that I was in.
Whoa. That
wasn't in a winning situation.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, but that wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
So you don't want to have that title as this guy's a loser. It happened to me with the Mets, and I believe it was my second year with the Mets in September. Right before I pitched the first complete game shutout, I had lost 5 games and tied a record for most losses in a month as a New York Met. And I remember David Wright was sitting there when the reporter was saying it to me, and David Wright got up and he goes, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You act like it's his fault." I believe my ERA was like a low 3 for those 5 games. We just didn't score many runs. And so I wound up getting the losses. And David Wright was pissed off. He was like, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Get the hell out of here and shoot the guy away from me." And I was like, you know what? I tell people all the time, whenever they get on me, and I get all the trolls on the internet, I get even friends that I went to high school with, and they're like, "Yeah, remember when this happened to you? Remember when that happened to you?" And I go, "Yeah, remember when you were watching at home? Remember when you were sitting in the upper deck?" I was on the field actually playing it. So I always carry my head up high no matter what.
That's crazy. So I wanted to talk, so take me back to your major league debut. What was the feeling like when you got the call up from the Diamondbacks, and that Diamondbacks roster was loaded? You played with Luis Gonzalez. You played with Randy Johnson, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And then all those, and then the rest of the roster. If you look down, it's talented. So what was that like? The first time you got the call up and seeing those players in the club?
It was awesome. It was of course it was everything you'd hoped for and dreamed of. I remember getting the call and then calling my mother immediately and telling her I'm getting called up. My wife had put together like all the travel plans and had my mom, dad, my father. My mom, my dad, my uncle, her, my sister, everybody flew out for my debut. I was in Texas, in Arlington. I was pitching against the Rangers, and they handled all of that. It was like, all right, you got to focus. You're going to be pitching soon. It was like 2 days later, I was going to be pitching. Not a big deal for me, but everybody wanted to take that off of me, which was great. I remember though, I get called up and I walk into the clubhouse and Randy Johnson is sitting there. And against the right side of the clubhouse is all the rookies for the Diamondbacks. On the left side, you had every other locker. So each veteran guy had 2 lockers. And I come walking in there and there's no space on the rookie side. And I'm looking around, the clubhouse kid is looking around, and he says to me, and he's like, I don't know where to put you. And Randy looks up and he goes, "Hey, Fig." He goes, "Oh, you could give him this locker right next to me." And I was like, well, excuse me, I'm in the high rent district. I put my bags down. Randy goes out. He's going to throw a bullpen. So he goes out to throw his bullpen. I went outside to go just, get acclimated with the stadium. And the stadium was huge. That's the biggest difference is the scale of everything when you get to the major leagues. The dimensions are the same on the field, but the scale, a third deck, the lights, the back of the whole stadium, the Jumbotron, the scale of everything is just immense. And so that's one of the things that I walked up the stairs just to kind of look out of the dugout, and Luis Gonzalez had to close my mouth because I was there like this. He closes my mouth and he's like, "Don't worry, kid. Hopefully you'll be here for a while." And I'm like, "All right, cool. Thanks." Meanwhile, I go back in after batting practice. I go, Randy Johnson has got his spike a line down between us, man, so you can keep your stuff on your side. And he kind of just gave me like, "Oh, okay." I went to go see the trainers. When I came back, there was nothing in my locker next to Randy. And I tried to play it off all smooth. He's sitting there looking, doing the crossword puzzle. And I'm looking around. I'm like, all right, what's going on? Maybe they found room on the rookie side. I look on the rookie side, no locker. I'm like, what is going on? So I walk past him. I go to the bathroom. I wash my face. And when I look in the mirror, I could see in one of the stalls my name tag and all my stuff hanging. Where in one of the stalls, Randy had moved all my stuff into the bathroom and said if I didn't like where I was given a chance to stay, then I could stay in there. And I, of course, apologized and got taken out of the shitter so I can sit in the normal place in the locker room.
Yeah, so I had Jeff Nelson on the show last week, and he played with Randy Johnson too. And for you, what was it like being a teammate with Randy Johnson, a legend, and learning from him?
What was crazy was that it was difficult to learn from him because he's 6'11", throws 97 from the left side. He's got a nasty slider. The crazy part was as we're throwing bullpens and people are watching me pitch, and one of my keys to my success is I threw 5 different pitches for strikes. So I had a really slow curveball. I had a good enough slider to kind of just move the ball back and forth. I had a split finger, which was my plus pitch. That was my out pitch all through the minor leagues. And when people would come around and watch, like while I was throwing my bullpen, they see this split finger. It was more like a fork ball. It almost looked like a knuckleball that I could throw about 82, 83 miles an hour. And they would always ask me, how do you hold it? What do you do? How do you do? And Randy actually came up to me and he's like, I remember literally, he just puts a ball like this and he goes, "Show me." And I'm like, huh? And he goes, "The split." And I show him the grip and I tell him, the one thing, make sure your thumb's not on the side, make sure your thumb's underneath like your fastball, and really just get through it just like it's going to be your fastball. You want to extend and release really late. Oh, wow. And he was working on trying to throw a third pitch of it being the split finger or the forkball. And I mean, that in itself, you got a guy who's legendary status Hall of Fame, and he's still trying to hone his craft, and he sees me throw this pitch and he's like, "Show me how to throw it." And of course, I'm like, hell yeah. If he's striking out, 300 guys, he'll strike out 500 guys with a split finger. So it was always about a guy named Mike Morgan, who was with the Diamondbacks. He had played for 20 some odd years with, I think, 11 or 12 different organizations. To me, he was inspirational because I saw how hard he worked just to stay in the game. He was running. He wouldn't run with the guys who were, the superstars or the definites on the team. He would run with the rookies because he wanted to keep up with the guys who were going to take his job. That's what he kept saying. He's like, I gotta be better than those guys. So I gotta be able to maintain myself better than those guys do. And I sat with him on many occasions, just talking baseball, pitching philosophies, who to try and emulate myself after. Back then, we didn't have the system that they have now, where you can literally punch up, a certain speed, a certain pitch, a certain count, and then watch all these videos against like the Atlanta Braves, sliders between 81 and 83. And you could see swings and misses or what kind of contact, and you can write down and develop a game plan on which hitters struggled with those pitches. Back when I was playing, we had just a videotape of last week's game that Greg Maddux pitched against the same team, like the Cubs. And I would try and see how he pitched that lineup. I would see who he challenged with fastballs. I would see, because I felt like my fastball only being 88 was more like Maddox's,
Right.
not the movement, not the pinpoint location. But if I was going to emulate somebody, it was easier to emulate somebody like him than try and, 97 like Randy Johnson or 94 like Pedro. My whole career kind of got derailed trying to be like Pedro because I was always like, if I could just throw 2-3 miles an hour harder, I could be like Pedro. And 2-3 mile an hour harder for me led to the ball staying up, staying flat, and going out of the park 2 or 3 mile an hour faster.
Wow. But now I want to obviously you played with a lot of teams in your career, but I want to get to the NL East because you got to play with the Phillies and Mets. What was it like playing with both teams and noticing the rivalry there in the NL East? And obviously you played with David Wright, Jose Reyes, Johan Santana, a lot of great players, and also in Philly too. But what was the experience like playing for both teams in the NL East?
It was excitement. It was always going to be excitement, and you knew that the rivalry was intense, but it was more intense, I think, for the Mets because they were always kind of looking up at the Phillies. The Phillies were on the rise, and when I got to the Phillies the second time, it was after they won a World Series. So I went from the team that was in last place. I get put on waivers and that's perspective where I wasn't good enough to make the last place team, but the team that won the World Series has a need for someone who can do what I can do. I got there and immediately tried to soak it all in, and it was a different environment. They didn't have Wi-Fi in their clubhouse, so when you got to the clubhouse, the phone signal stunk because it was underground. There was no Wi-Fi. They wanted you to get there. They wanted you to concentrate. They wanted you to focus on baseball. The starting lineup for the other team was already up there. The video guy was sitting around ready to, help you look and develop a game plan if you needed to. Guys sat and prepared. Everyone had like their own books of ways that they gotten people out. Of course, like a guy like Roy Halladay has his book and it's like the Bible, the way he's writing into it. And it's like put under lock and key, but it was watching these guys and how they trained for success. And it was a job to them. It wasn't just showing up and, hey, let's put on a uniform and play some baseball. It was, we're here to win a ball game and we're going to beat you, not only beat you to the ballpark, we're going to beat you while we're at the ballpark. We're going to beat you then when the game is announced. Then we're going to beat you during the game. And then after the game, we're going to even talk about how we beat you so that tomorrow you already have it in your head that we're going to beat you again. That was the Phillies mentality. And it was awesome to see. It was just a different level of focus. It was a different level of focus. It wasn't it's great to be in the big leagues and let's have fun. It was, we're here. We've been, at the top of the division for some time, and our goal is to win the World Series, and then the goal, of course, was to repeat. So no knock on the Mets. It was just I don't think they knew any better at the time. That it wasn't a team that was. It was a team that had just dealt with in 2007, 8. You had 2006 where they, get to the playoffs, they get knocked out. 2007, there's the collapse. 2008, we didn't seal the deal towards the end. We shut down Shea Stadium in an almost embarrassing way, having the ceremony after losing and getting knocked out of the playoffs. Then we open up Citi Field and we're hit with a bunch of injuries right away. And then the next year, 2010, I'm with the defending world champions. I'm looking at their rings, and then it kind of puts things into perspective for you because it's not one guy that gets the ring. It's 40 guys that get the ring. You're going to be involved somehow. So I got over, at that point in my career, I was over trying to figure out why me, why not me. It was, just be ready when the call comes. And so they gave me the opportunity. I was there. I continued to learn. I continued to grow as a pitcher. I had success. And then when they tried to sneak me through waivers, of course, the Houston Astros picked me up, and I still got more of an opportunity. And I signed my first guaranteed contract with the Houston Astros at the age of 36, where it took me 15 years to make a team out of spring training. I had never done that. I had always been the last guy cut. I'd always been one of the last guys cut because, we're going to go with 4 outfielders and, we'll call you up when we need a reliever, or we need an arm. So yeah, there's the emotional side of it that makes this game really tough. So it doesn't matter these kids that get drafted high and they get signing bonuses. The kid that got drafted in the first round of my draft, He played 1.5 years of baseball, really didn't like baseball at all. And they signed him to a first round, salary or a signing bonus. He went out and played a year and a half and just wasn't in love with the game. And he didn't want to be away from home. He didn't want to be away from his family. He was from a small town where he was the man. And so all that has to get taken into account. And so what makes it really difficult is when you're faced with adversity. How do you deal with that? How do you find a way to get over that? How do you find a way to continue to strive and continue to get better when things aren't going your way? A lot of people pack it up and they just quit. It's not an easy climb, even though you get drafted. That in itself, there's only been 22,000 major league ball players to ever put on a uniform ever, and that's for a single day. That's not 22,000 who have played 10 years in the big leagues. There's 22,000 human beings on the face of the planet in the history of the world that have gotten a chance to put on a major league uniform. I was very blessed to get a chance to do it 11 times going up.
Yeah, this is what I call underdog story, where you never give up, you keep going, and that's what I love about learning about these athletes, just how they came and how hard they worked to get to this point. And you worked hard to where you're at today, and you had a great career, and also obviously you played with a lot of great players, and obviously managers, Troy Manuel, you played underneath. And I want to get to one specific player, Roy Halladay. What was it like being in the same locker room as him? Obviously, R.I.P. to him. Just such a horrible thing what happened, and his son is living his legacy right now, Braden Halladay. And what was it like just being with him and seeing the way he goes about his business? And man, what a legend.
Yes, second to none when it came to work ethic. He was not going to be outworked by anybody. He was going to set the gold standard, and he was the last of that breed of starting pitchers who went 9 innings, and that was his goal. He did not want anybody coming in his games. Like, you couldn't even warm up in his games. I was being the long reliever. It could be a tie ball game, and they're like, "Hey, Figgy, you might want to warm up just in case." And I'm like, "Yeah, right. Not happening. I'd rather go in there and have to throw my 8 warm-up pitches from the mound and see what we get than let Roy look back there and see that it's me warming up." He was just a warrior, a competitor, extreme, like at the top level. His focus was beyond. He was the first player I had ever seen like taking naps early on. Like, he would get there at 1 o'clock and he'd be in this oxygen chamber. And his nutrition was next level. He actually changed the Phillies to getting a nutritionist and to getting guys were getting catered meals because they had food allergies. That had never been done before. And so he was a guy who was so laser-like focused that Jamie Moyer, who was 44 at the time, 43 maybe, Jamie Moyer wound up playing catch with him every day so he could learn how to throw Roy Halladay's cutter. Oh, wow. And Roy Halladay wanted to learn how to throw Jamie Moyer's changeup. So they would play catch nonstop like little kids, throwing these pitches at each other, hitting each other, bouncing the ball and everything else. But it was the mutual respect that they had for each other because, of course, as Jamie Moyer, he's trying to get something else to help him stay around. And Roy Halladay is like, you know what? If I can add this, this would make me an even better pitcher. And it always came to a grip. It was a grip. It was a mental, approach to how you threw the pitch that makes it different for every single pitcher. But it was great to see that this guy was. I don't think there's anybody else you could want on the mound for a game 7 other than him, because you knew you were going to get the best out of him. And it might not have been only for 9 innings. If he still had pitches left in his arm, he was going to keep going out there.
So this is a 2-part question here. Obviously, now you pitched in Taiwan. Take me back to that experience. What was it like pitching in Taiwan, a different country? And obviously, you won 2 championships there. So what was that like, winning 2 championships? And then the next part to this, what's it like now being an analyst covering the game on a different aspect?
So the Taiwan part of it was a dream. It was a game changer for me in the essence, because it gave me an opportunity to learn the game and learn to love the game in a whole new way. Being in Taiwan, not knowing the language, trying to revive my career after having surgery. It was an opportunity to go and play. And see how, the Taiwanese made pitches move, how they threw sliders differently, how their mechanics were different. And at the same time, really prove how universal the game of baseball is, because you don't even have to speak the language to understand what's going on. My catcher, his English name was Eddie. He was fantastic at calling a game. We use hand signals. It's still the same 1, 2, 3, 4 wiggle kind of thing. We use hand signals, but he constantly was always asking me about, how do you want to pitch this guy? How do you want to pitch that guy? I wound up being a pitching coach my second time in Taiwan because the GM called me and said, "What's wrong with the team?" And I said, "The team's very uncomfortable with the pitching coach and the manager because they're Japanese and the Taiwanese feel inferior, especially when they're being scolded by the Japanese." I said, so it's a hierarchy thing where they're not explaining the game. They're not explaining what they're doing wrong. They're not giving them credit when they do things right. And it's very standoffish. And so they wound up firing the manager and the pitching coach.
Wow.
2:00 in the morning, I get a phone call and they're like, "Do you want to be the pitching coach?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." So went out there the next day. I said, as long as I can hire an assistant. I hired a Taiwanese assistant who was 41 years old at the time, who I had utmost respect for because he was still doing it and doing it at a high level. I wanted him there because he could speak the language. He could translate in a way that the translator couldn't when it came to competing and pushing each other. So I told everybody we got to pick it up a notch. People are getting fired, and it's not their fault for the way we're playing, but we need to pick it up. We were in last place. I made a deal with them that I would shave my head if we won 5 games in a row. And my dumbass won the first game and then won the 5th game.
Oh my.
And I wound up having to shave my head because I'm a man of my word. And it kind of bonded the team and bonded the pitchers, especially because they knew I was serious about this. Like I cared about this in a way that the other pitching coach couldn't have, because I was in the heat of the battle with them. We wound up going from last place to first place. We played against the winner of the first half plays the winner of the second half. We played the winner of the first half and we swept them in 4 games. Knew our opponent inside and out. That's the crazy part with Taiwan, is there's 4 teams only in the league. So you're playing 120 games, which means you're playing the other 3 teams 40 times a year.
Wow.
To develop a game plan and to execute a game plan when you're facing the same team pitching against them probably 9 times is very difficult. And I challenge any pitcher on the planet. And you look at some of their numbers against teams that they have faced in the same season more than 2 times. And it's usually a different result because you kind of learn what, the nuances of how a pitcher likes to work, how a hitter likes to work. So it was awesome for me because I was able to show and able to learn as a pitching coach, because there was so many different things that each one of these pitchers did that when we got done and we wound up winning the championship, I actually was nominated for MVP, and I had only been there for 2.5 months. I was there for half a season. I got nominated for MVP, and it was very humbling, and I was honored just to even be named with the other guys, because I was a pitcher. I was a starting pitcher. Right. I was pitching, once a week, and yet they felt the importance of what I did for the team as a whole was worthy of the nomination, and that was great. Taiwan was fantastic for me. They let me pitch. As I always say, if you give me an opportunity to pitch and just sit back and not panic or have the bullpen ready in the first inning, I can do some special things, and I was able to do that throughout my career. Now, fast forward after those fantastic years in Taiwan, winning 2 championships out of 3 seasons, I became an analyst right after that. And just when you think it couldn't get any better, or the luck and the success that I've had, because if you think about it, again, 22,000 people got to play Major League Baseball. That's great. I win championships in Taiwan. You don't get many chances to do that when you go over there and play maybe 1 season. Now I'm getting a chance to be the lead analyst for SNY, which is the Mets, cable network. And I grew up a Met fan, played for the Mets, love the Mets, still root for the Mets. And there's only one of those guys. And the ones before me all were on the 86 Mets.
Right.
which is, you know, that team can do no wrong. They did a lot of wrong, but they could do no wrong in the eyes of Mets fans and for the organization. So I get in there and I'm a journeyman pitcher who, you know, had 2 years with the Mets. I got originally drafted by the Mets, very knowledgeable in the game. And I was able to kind of learn on the fly. I had never done television before. So it was very scary for me that, you know, my very first show, it's the first time I'm going to be on TV, you know, breaking down, you know, whoever pitched that night and the matchups and everything else. I had no training in it whatsoever. There's no teleprompter, which I have to always remind people. I didn't get a teleprompter. You know, the host gets a teleprompter, and that's only just to kind of intro the show, bring it in, and then all of a sudden he'll ask questions on the fly. And then I get 30 seconds to answer a question on live television. And I also get only 30 seconds to tell you everything I know.
Wow.
So I used to speak 1,000 words a minute trying to get it all in because I was always afraid someone's going to say I didn't know everything. And I had to get over that. I had to get over that and really focus on giving the best information that I could in a way that could be understood by a 7-year-old, a high school athlete, a man who's played some baseball, a former player, a current player, a female who is watching as a fan and wants to learn. I had to be able to teach all those different people. And I had to learn to use vernacular that would help me get across the points that I was trying to make, and being able to tell it visually as well, and working with the editors. And I was always in the editing room and trying to get the elements up our elements, up the fonts, up the graphics, because I felt like we were so behind before I got there that our technology and our just the way it looked, it was very, you know, old school ESPN-ish. And I said, we need to up our game. And finally, in the last couple of years, they did. They invested in it, and the product came out better, and we looked better. And I went in there, again, not any training, not knowing what to expect. 5 years later, I leave there with 2 Emmys.
Oh, wow.
We had the best live sports show in the New York area. We won an Emmy for my last 2 years of being the lead analyst. And so it was a great team effort. And it's just like winning a World Series ring. And, you know, that was one of the things I didn't know, you know, what's the goal? What's the goal? Well, the goal is to, you know, be the best that I can possibly be. And I lost as the lead analyst. I went up against Ronnie and Keith. They both won. Al Leiter won the next year. I'm like, I'm going against these big names who've been doing this for a long, long time. I said, you know, I'll bide my time and I'll have that success individually. But I really felt like I was able to help the team and SNY take that broadcast to the next level. So I have on my mantle, very proudly, my 2 Emmys. And that's, again, making the most of an opportunity and not looking back and not saying, woe is me, or wondering, you know, what I did right, what I did wrong. I was able to grow and learn and continue learning about this beautiful game.
Yeah, and this is another 2-part question. Obviously, you have your own podcast out there called Amazing But True Podcast, and what's that been like for you? And also, what does vote in or out mean entail?
Okay, well, the podcast itself is it's been a blessing. The New York Post hired me to be the Mets podcast, Amazing But True host, and I wanted to make sure that I like having banter. I like having camaraderie. I like having a different opinion, and I'm not a big fan of the one-man shows where their opinion is the only one that matters. So the producer, Jake Brown, I told him I wanted him to stay on because he's a huge Mets fan, and he's seen the game in a way that I haven't. He's seen the game from the stands. He can talk about the energy of being in the crowd. He can talk where I can't talk about that. You know, like for a lot of my career, I played against the Mets, so I could give you the opposite side. A lot of my career, I can tell you about the failures that have happened. I can tell you about dealing with failure. I can tell you about getting sent down, released, and then getting called back up. So there was a nice mix that I thought we would have together. And it's been a fantastic ride thus far. It really kept me sane during COVID because we did it from home.
Yeah.
And you know, we tried to, you know, we try to bring the fans a very honest, a very educated, opinionated show. We don't hold back. We don't have to hold back. We don't have to adhere to any protocols with anyone. Jake is fun. He's loud. He's boisterous. He's entertaining. And then, of course, you know, you have me where I have to sometimes talk him off the ledge or sometimes push him off the ledge. That's what I always tell him. That's the beauty of our show, is you never know what to expect. But we have had an A-list of guests.
Yeah.
I mean, very first year, I pulled out the Rolodex, and everybody was awesome to accept. We had Terry Collins, we had David Wright, we had Mike Piazza, we had Mookie Wilson, we had Doc Gooden, I mean, it was just the who's of Mets, and also Met fans. You know, Jim Brewer is a huge Met fan who, you know, had his own thing on YouTube going crazy after each and every game. We had Glenn Close on just a few weeks ago. Yeah. So it's great to have all these different people from different walks of life talk about their experiences as Mets fans. And then, of course, you know, having the current Mets, Pete Alonso has been on our show, and constantly I'm in contact with him, and we joke and we laugh, and it's been great to have that contact still with members of the team. And the podcast continues to get better and better and better, and I love it. I highly suggest you subscribe and tune in.
Yeah, I tuned into a few of them, and it's awesome. And you guys had Jeff Nelson on too, right? Recently?
No, Jeff Nelson has his podcast with the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
So we work with the New York Post together. So it's funny. It's Nelson and Nelson technically, but it wouldn't have been a good Met and Yankee podcast. We've been arguing Mets and Yankees all the time. But yeah, he's great as well. And I think the Post has a really good crew with all the different podcasts and the people that are running them, or people that are hosting them. And of course, Jake Brown producing, he does a fantastic job. You know, he has the pulse of what the fans want to hear, and really gets the best out of his talent. And now turning to Voting Her Out. Voting Her Out is a project that I'm very passionate about. And it's a voter education app where you're going to get truthful information. It's basically crowdsourced, fact-checked information, where people give their opinions, whether they agree or disagree with policies, a certain politician's stance, a candidate's stance. And before the election, it was really instrumental in giving people, you know, not one side or the other. It wasn't Fox, it wasn't CNN. It was people who cared about the issues and rallied around the issues, because that's what we try to do. Is we try to give you, you go and you create a profile like Facebook. As you're doing it, you're answering questions. So it becomes like Match.com, where you're showing where you stand on things politically, and you get to pick the topics, you get to pick the issues. So gun violence, education, climate control, economy, you pick those 4 or 5 topics, you go in and answer the questions, and it'll match you up with the candidate who best represents you based on how the other people who answer the questions very similar also fall in line with their things. And you might learn something about yourself. It's not saying that, oh, if you're a Republican, you're more Democrat now. It's saying, you know what, the way that you look at certain policies, you might not be as conservative Republican as you think you are. And so there's a whole rainbow of, you know, parties in between. We just try to give everybody a chance to be heard, be seen, and the information that gets put out, because it's crowdsourced. It's almost like the peer sharing days, where you know if something's not right? If you're looking at downloading a movie or an album and you see 10,000 thumbs down but 50 thumbs up, you know I'm not trying to get a virus. I'm not downloading that. It's the same thing with information nowadays. And we wanted to make sure that if you see something and you read it and you see it's factual, vote it up. Like Reddit, as it gets voted up, it becomes the cream of the crop under each one of those topics. And then you feel like you're a more educated voter when it comes time to vote. And the other policy that we always talk about is voting every day. So take that 10, 15 minutes and scroll through the articles, read, vote things up, vote things down, and you keep a digital ballot. So that this way, when it comes time to vote, yes, I already did my research about what's going on in my local government. I already did it's not just about the presidential election. It's about the local elections, which are really so much more important to helping you and your family and your community with what's going on.
That's amazing. That's really
I've been the director of outreach for really a labor of love. The people that are involved, Julia Fusco, Lisa Malika, they have really inspired me. These are two women who give their all to this project, and monetarily, it's funded. It's funded by us. It's not outside sourced or anything like that. Literally, we've had to put it together from scratch, and it actually started out as an idea on a napkin, and now it's thriving as a website right now, and continues to grow and continues to help people in all walks of life. Where if you want good information, you go here, and you're able to get that, and then share it with your friends. And that's what we feel the best part is being able to share that information.
Yeah, that's really awesome. That's a good thing that you guys are doing. And I don't know how much time you have left, but do you have time to do a quick rapid fire segment?
Do it.
All right. All right. The first one here, where do you keep your Taiwan rings?
You know what? They didn't have rings. What they did
Okay.
for us is they sent us on vacations. And so the team would go somewhere together, but just in case I wasn't back there the next year, I got a chance to go to Australia, all expenses paid, which is really awesome.
Favorite memorable game that you played in the majors in Taiwan?
Taiwan would have to be the game 7 that I won. I won games 1, 4, and 7 in my first championship, and the sea of orange ribbons that flowed over. I watch it over and over again on YouTube every chance I get. It just gives me goosebumps, gives me chills, because seeing everybody's face, just the joy, was awesome. That was Taiwan. Major leagues. I'm torn because there's, of course, my first game where I got my first hit. It was Father's Day, and my dad was there, and I got a hit and was able to give him the bat and the ball afterwards. But the first complete game shutout, my first game as a Met, there's a bunch of them. Even I think the bookends of my Mets career was, starting and getting a win at Shea Stadium against the Milwaukee Brewers, and then my last game as a Met, I threw a complete game shutout at Citi Field. So I don't think it gets better than that.
Wow. Funniest teammate that you play with in the majors, Taiwan, and funniest person that you work with right now in SNY.
Well, no longer working at SNY, but let me see. The funniest person, I think Jake Brown is hilarious. And of course, I do the podcast with him. Funniest teammate, when I was coming up in the minor leagues, was a guy named Frank Brooks. And I mean, this guy, just looking at him made me laugh, but he was really funny with the things he said. Funniest teammate in the major leagues, and everybody is a little bit of a character to them. One of the guys that really got me settled early on in my career, Luis Gonzalez, was great because he treated everybody the same, whether you had 10 years in the big leagues or you had 10 minutes in the locker room. He treated everybody the same. He was always about team building. I remember he brought in a karaoke machine during spring training, and he started it out with him singing. And then he said, every day a rookie has to sing until there's no more rookies. And then anybody else who wants to sing, jump up on the mic. So I was always enamored with the way that he played the game. He loved being around the game, and he's always smiling and making fun and trying to keep everybody loose.
And then funniest teammate in Taiwan.
Taiwan. My favorite teammate is a guy named Leo Fu Hao. Used to call him Ichiro. He was built like Ichiro, little right fielder, very skinny, but he was strong. Then he changed his name to Jax because he hit more home runs than just the 4 the year before. So he hits Jax now. So his name was Jax. He had this whole thing going with this. He would do an X when he hit the home run. The guy was very, very funny because he was just a different, and he wanted to know English so bad. He wanted to learn English so bad. He was just a character all in itself. And when he put on his uniform, he he turned into Ichiro. He turned into this character named Jax, and he was just a great guy to be around.
All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot here right now. I'm a big Yankee fan.
Yep.
So I'm sure you and Jake discussed this already, but who is a better pitcher right now in New York, Jacob deGrom or Garrett Cole?
That's a no-brainer. The only thing Garrett Cole has is that he's still pitching right now. Jacob deGrom is the best pitcher in New York. Jacob deGrom is the best pitcher on the planet, and I would dare to say the universe, but I haven't seen the lefty from Uranus.
Does Garrett Cole and Jacob deGrom remind you of your former teammate Doc Holliday with the mindset they have?
You know, aces do. And it was great to see that there's still those values in an ace, right? That mindset of I'm going to dominate you over and over and over again as long as I can. And I love to see these guys push each other, but it's such a different time now that Jacob deGrom throws that complete game with 15 punch outs, and he winds up having to miss a start, and then now he's injured, and you wonder if that has an effect on it.
Yeah.
Where that was nothing for guys in my generation because, hey, it's just another 9 innings next week. These guys aren't built to do that anymore because they're not used to doing it. I always say, if you're not allowed to do something or you're told that you're not good at something, then you're not going to be good at it. So until that mindset changes and you see the complete game being valued, and I don't think it will be because of, you know, they want the productivity for a long time for the amount of money that they're getting paid, and they'd rather have the bullpen blow it like they always do for Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom should have 150 wins already.
Yeah.
Right? It's ridiculous. There's no way he should only have 70 wins in his career.
Yeah.
It's a crime. It's a crime against humanity, and I think it needs to stop. But
I mean,
having said that, it's always fun to watch those guys pitch every fifth day because you know you're going to see must-see TV.
it's not only the bullpen; it's the offense that doesn't.
Yes. Yes. And there's no rhyme or reason to it because they've had 120 different teammates.
Yeah.
It's not been the same lineup from when he first came up, but it's always been the same thing. It's always been the same result no matter what. And they always say, oh, it's, you know, they're putting pressure on themselves. No, they're not. No, they're really not. They're you know, they can try and keep it as loose as they want. And it does, I'm going to look into it. I keep saying I will, and I'm going to. This is now my life's mission. I'm going to put together the ERA of any pitcher that has pitched against Jacob deGrom, a starter's ERA in the history that he's pitched, because I guarantee you